Ridiculous fondling cardboard.
What is up? Welcome back to Fondling Cardboard. I'm your host, Mike Lakusta, aka the Golf Card Collector. And today we've got a repeat guest. That's right, John Morton, our vintage pre-war golf card correspondent, is back to talk about a very important subject. That is the 1900 Copes set. A very iconic set for a variety of golfers. And we talk about a huge purchase that John made and an even bigger sale. Now we learn from the expert how to make the most of this sort of situation that he describes, how to make a set, let's say, polish it off and make it better. And I'm not talking about card fondling, card cleaning, or anything like that. I'm talking about strategies and how to take cards in and out of a set and replace them with higher or lower quality cards to make the overall value of that set better, and how to maximize, or actually a better word is optimize, your selling approach with that set of cards versus selling each individual, and how to strategically target potential buyers without knowing them from a hole in the wall. John also shares how to find vintage tobacco cards from the UK online and how to protect yourself when making big purchases. Without further ado, here's a conversation. Congrats on the huge pickup. This is from a little while ago. I would guess 6 months ago, you probably won this at a UK-based auction. Can you walk us through how that went down? Where did you find it? What drew you to that particular set? Was there anything special about those particular cards in that set? And what's the story?
Yeah, so the 1900 Copes golfer set that you're talking about, one of the, if not possibly the most famous and most iconic golf card set in history. It's one that I've always been really passionate about because it holds so much history within the set. It contains rookie cards of some of the biggest legends of the game, such as old Tom Morris and young Tom Morris. But it also has other individuals in the set that kind of fly under the radar because of how big old and young Tom Morris's cards are. Other names such as Allen Robertson, John Ball, J.H. Taylor. There's several other major legends of the game that have their rookie cards, or in a couple other cases, second edition of cards in that same set. I've been fortunate to own a number of sets of Copes golfers cards over the years. I tend to kind of build up a set, just acquiring them 1, 2, 3 at a time. There's 50 cards in the set itself. But as I've, built up a particular set and then I start a second one, I'll typically try to find a home for that complete set when I get close to a second complete set. When I finish one, it's not that I sell it right away. I wait until I have a second one because I do enjoy owning these items. I do enjoy appreciating the history and being able to hold them in my hands while they're in my possession, at least. But a few months back, as you pointed out, I had a lead and found an auction house in the UK. I'm constantly scouring the internet for different auction houses in the UK, anywhere, England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. And this particular auction house had a complete set of Copes golfers cards they were selling. And when I went and looked at them closely online, didn't actually go to England to look at them, but when I looked at them online, it was a very high grade set. I've handled enough Copes golfers cards over the years, over the last, call it 10 years, to know, generally speaking, looking at photos, roughly what the cards are going to grade. And looking at this particular set, it was absolutely going to be a high grade set. So I knew roughly within, give or take, a grade point or two what I figured the set would grade. And made the conscious decision that I was going to go in and go after this set really hard. Do you want me to talk numbers of what I originally spent for it?
Yeah, I'd love to. If you're willing to
Okay.
share it. As I told you offline, John, I really respect your balance between your obvious enthusiasm about golf history, golf cards, and pairing that with an investor mindset, a flipper mindset. And in the past, I've looked at that participation in the hobby, sort of I frowned upon it. Like I
Yeah.
thought it wasn't giving respect to the cards, but out of all of my hobby connections, I know that you probably respect the history and the cards more than anybody else. So I'd love to hear, that
Yeah.
not only your passion for the set and the cards, but also your passion for moving them.
When I decided to go after this set really, really hard and heavy from a price standpoint, um, I got to the auction day and I had a number in my mind that I was willing to go up to, and thankfully it ended up selling for less than that. So I was able to pick up this set, all ungraded cards from the UK that I had shipped to me in Alabama in the States. I ended up spending about $5,500 on the whole set. Now again, this is ungraded, so uh, people that may not be familiar with grading practices or grading standards may hear that number and kind of take a step back and go, whoa, that's a lot of money, to hypothesize and speculate on how the set would do. But again, if you know grading standards well enough, you have a pretty good idea when you can see both the front and the back of the cards. As long as they're clear, good scans of the cards, you can get a pretty decent idea. But about $5,500 is what I spent on the raw set and for shipping. And then I spent about $2,000 on grading it with PSA. Once they got in, I pulled them out of the pages they were in very carefully and sent them all off, sent the full 50 card set off to PSA. Now, one thing I will say about this set is that the other set that I already owned at the time had a few high grade cards that I just hadn't actually sent off to PSA. So I evaluated both from the set that I had just acquired as well as the one I already owned, and made sure that I was sending the higher quality version of each of those cards so that the set that I would actually receive back from PSA was as high of a grade as could be for an average grade throughout. About probably a month or so later is when I got all of them back. I had to send the old Tom and young Tom Morris cards separately because they're higher values. The other 48 cards all sent in a single submission. When I got all 50 cards back, the average grade was 5.66 throughout all 50 cards. Now, when you look at PSA set registry for the 1900 Copes Golfer set, there actually aren't that many full complete sets that have been added to the registry. I think at the time there were maybe 10 or 11 at the most, maybe 12. This set cracked the top 10. Now, that's the top 10 out of, again, only 11 or 12 sets that are in the registry. However, the difference between the number 1 set and the number 4 set is only about, I think it's maybe a half to 3/4 of a point for the average grade. But the difference between the 5th set and mine wasn't that far apart. So realistically, it was a very high grade set to begin with. But it was very well regarded within that set registry, especially when you consider a few of the cards in particular in the set that got PSA 7s or PSA 8. I did have one PSA 8 in the set in particular. So got that set back. I knew from the get-go that I was wanting to grade that set and then have it go to auction. I wasn't about to speculate on what the graded set could sell for, so I sent it off to Golden Age Golf Auctions, which is a trusted golf dedicated auction house that specializes in high-end golf memorabilia and collectibles. And that got auctioned off in their April auction, which is aligned with the Masters tournament from a date standpoint on the calendar. And the final price for the entire set ended up being just over $40,000.
Sheesh. Wow. So I had an idea that you made off well on that situation, and that's why I asked if cards helped fund your trip to Scotland. For some reason, I was picturing like 20 or 30,000, but gosh, John,
Yeah.
that's incredible. I mean, now when I look at the numbers, like this isn't perfect math, but
Mhm.
$5,500 cost, $2,000 grading fees. There's a little bit of a caveat because you substituted some of your personal collection cards
Mhm.
that were potentially higher grade just so that the entire set was better. But to eight, well, I guess not 8x, but whatever, five to 7x your money on such a value is it blows my mind. I live in the world of shiny modern cards, and there are situations where you can flip and whatever, and there are people who try to take advantage of that. But what you're capable of doing with your enthusiasm and your knowledge is incredible.
I appreciate that. And I will say there were several things that contributed to the result that I got. Several important things that really helped the situation and helped the opportunity for me to maximize it. The first I already alluded to, and that was making sure that between the set that I already had in my personal collection and the cards that were in this set that I graded, that I was sending the highest grades, highest condition cards possible. So I was already leveraging to maximize the average grade there. The second thing, and this was more important at the end of the day, was making sure that I strategized with the auction house on how to auction this set off. There was a big debate that I had to have internally with myself of, do I sell this entire set by itself in one single lot where only one person acquires the entire complete set? Or the alternative was to take the biggest, most valuable cards, whether from a name standpoint or from a grade standpoint, and separate those into individual lots, and then have the balance of the set all auction off together.
I,
Ultimately, the latter is what I ended up doing. I had six different cards that sold, or five different cards, excuse me, that sold individually. And then the other 45 cards from the set were in one single lot.
that's
So by
interesting.
doing that,
I'm really
yeah.
glad that you're talking about this because the first question I was coming up in my mind is in general, it is not good flipping or investing, selling practice to buy cards individually and then combine them into a lot and try and sell it. That's
Mhm.
I don't know, I'm not going to use the word lazy, but that's the easy way of doing it because you only have to have one transaction,
Yep.
and because it's easy, the buyer should earn some kind of a discount. And if you split them up, then individuals who want a specific card are willing to pay more for that specific card rather than having to spend extra on the rest. So good on you for coming up with that idea. I've heard other vintage collectors say that there are actual strategies of assembling an
Mhm.
entire set, a vintage set. I don't know if it's pre-war tobacco type vintage or if they're talking 50s, 60s tops, Bowman type stuff for baseball. But there are ways of assembling complete sets, and somehow that adds value. Um,
It absolutely does. And it was the reason that I ultimately decided to go with the latter route of separating a few of the cards out was because and again, this goes into, strategizing to get the maximum price for yourself when you're trying to sell something. Utilize resources that you have at your disposal. One of those resources I had was the PSA set registry. I registered this complete set in the set registry. That already put it on the radar of major collectors, major vintage golf collectors. But then I also went and looked at the current status of the top sets that were better than mine to see what is the grade of their John Ball card, is a good example. The John Ball card in that Copes Golfer set was the highest grade card that I got back from PSA. It was a PSA 8. When I went and checked the higher graded sets, there were several of those sets that had PSA sixes, PSA sevens, PSA seven and a halves. So those individuals that own those sets that were higher than mine needed to upgrade or could take the opportunity to upgrade their John Ball card in their particular set. So there were
Brilliant.
several thoughts, um, several ways that I strategized there to make sure that I was making the right decisions. With in conjunction with the auction house, I was consulting with them, but ultimately it was up to me. But I was strategizing in every way I could to make sure that I maximized the ultimate value, and that's exactly what ended up happening. The John Ball card in particular ended up going for more than $8,000 by itself. So it was a really good experience. Obviously, very successful, no doubt, but a very good experience from a uh, strategizing standpoint to make sure that you're making all the best decisions in the best interest of the final price.
Well, that was brilliant of you to go to the PSA set registries and analyze. I'm going to call it your competitors. I work in sales, and so in every sales industry, you're going to have competitors who are, uh, competing against you. And so you want to look at what the gaps are, and you attack those gaps. And you took advantage of the fact that somebody might want that Tom Ball card or John Ball card or
Mhm.
any others. My when you first described this, I thought, okay, you took the top six names and peeled them out, and then the rest of it is like bulk cards, But no, you put some thought into this. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it was a big set of decisions that all needed to fall the right way, and I was thankful that it did.
Well, congratulations again. Thanks for kind of walking through how that went down. I hope listeners learned a lot. I know I did. To wrap up the conversation on the 1900s Cope set, was there any lessons you learned from the experience that I guess the rest of us might benefit from?
Um, I think several of the lessons that I honestly just I wasn't intentionally doing them, but I learned them along the way, such as going through the PSA set registry and adding my entire set. That was just kind of a hey, yeah, why not? Why don't I do that? But looking back on it now, it was a key piece to the puzzle of or a key piece to the ladder, if you will, of selling that set successfully. The biggest lessons that are from that story really surround more the beginning part, and that is identifying the potential value of cards based on their grades. A lot of it, I can't overstate how much. A lot of it goes back to the quality of the images and the scans of the cards that you're looking at potentially buying. If they're not clear scans, if they're not clear photos, you can't really make a proper judgment or proper estimation. You also need to see the front and the backs of the cards. Buying things from the UK is a bit of a double-edged sword in that you can get some great cards, but you can't necessarily go see them in person. With other auction houses here in the States, you might live pretty close to one of them. You can go see that set in person and analyze it before you decide to bid. It's not as easy to do that when the auction house is 4,000 miles away. So being able to decipher based on the quality of the photos, what the grades might be is a really important piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, that's a very important lesson, especially with vintage and pre-war cards. When it comes to modern cards, all the shiny stuff that I still get obsessed with these days. Condition's important, but you're talking between a PSA 8, PSA 9, or PSA 10. And of course, there can
Yeah,
be vast price differences between those, but it's a lot different than what you're describing. These cards can have varying degrees of condition from a 1 to a 10, or to be frankly ripped in half, an ungradable card. And those can still carry value and significance in the hobby. Um,
exactly.
Now, I guess on that theme, I was wondering if you were nervous at all that maybe these cards could stick into the binder pages? Like, uh, was that a risk that you analyzed?
Um, I guess it could have been a risk. The where I bought them from is a place I had purchased from previously, so I wasn't. The thought really didn't cross my mind. I knew that it was a reputable auction house that knew what they were doing. It wasn't just a random auction house that had never handled tobacco cards or cards before. So wasn't really worried about the condition of the cards within the sleeves that they were shipped in. Um, it honestly, I just spent a lot more time than normal pulling them out of the pages just to make sure that I didn't ding any of the edges or corners in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I know what that's like, handling those cards with pure delicacy. That's one of the aspects of the hobby that I really enjoy. Those fine motor skill moments of giving 100% of your attention and your vision and
Yeah.
everything to handling a card and taking care of it. There's something to be said about that aspect of the hobby, and that's why this podcast is called Fondling Cardboard. I'm not a big fan of having my cards sitting in a vault and just showing off photos on my phone or posting on social
Yeah.
media. I think it's important to spend that time with the cards.
It's very much like I think of the analogy of the old children's board game Operation. It's very much like Operation when you're trying to handle cards that are high grade, but they're ungraded at the time that you're handling them. It's from the oils on your fingertips to a fingernail potentially nicking an edge or a corner. There's a lot of ways that handling them can go wrong. So being able to do so, I always think back to the game of Operation because you kind of have to have that um, same level of fine motor skills.
Well, there you go. Trim your nails, folks. And even those of us who spend our days working on a computer or in meetings with people, if you're in the hobby, you can still be a surgeon, although just with cardboard. And I'll wrap up by saying congrats again, as well
Thank
as
you.
your mindset. Not keeping those higher graded cards for yourself. I think a lot of us might fall into the trap, or at least be tempted to think, this is a very prestigious item, that John Ball card, thinking, I can hold on to that and have it be part of my ego and my collection. A lot of people who just appreciate the cards themselves might actually prefer one that's been a little lived, let's say, a little dinged up. It's obviously traveled in somebody's backpack, been tacked
Yep.
up on somebody's wall. So good for you for acknowledging and taking the most value you can out of the situation.
I appreciate that.
I always enjoy my conversations with John because I learn a ton. And although vintage and pre-war cards aren't necessarily my niche within this niche, I still find them very fascinating. I've owned several tobacco cards and I look forward to exploring them more, as I know John will be appearing on the show several more times to come. Thanks again, John. You can find him online on Instagram or Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at John Morton 215. That's JOHNMORTON 215. Of course, I am the Golf Card Collector at the Golf Card Collector on Instagram. And we've got a pretty good group on Facebook, which is Golf Cards and Memorabilia. Come check us out, and I'll see you guys next week.
Ridiculous, golf card collector.